Hey, hey, hey. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Um, Tonight we're just going to read from the Unsafe blog. This is actually from September 28th. And I was reading this while I was like eating lunch. And then I was like, I have to record this. This is incredible. So it's about Venezuela. Now, I talked about Venezuela like briefly on here just because I was watching like a couple. There have been like a few documentaries that have come out about Venezuela. I will link them in the description box. If you are not watching what's happening in Venezuela, I would really consider you to do so. What's happening there is very interesting for a number of reasons. Like, first of all, like Venezuela, I believe, is like a communist sort of state or territory or something, and it's actually very, very developed. Like, they've got roads, electricity, running water and everything, but like hyperinflation has just caused their dollar, their money, their currency to be worth nothing. And like I don't think they actually have anything to trade in the global market, so it's just basically like everybody there is starving. Like, people are selling children, men are throwing babies in the street. It's like insane. And there's like a Vice documentary. There's a couple documentaries. Like, HBO has a documentary covering it. Vice has a documentary covering it. But when we're talking about climate migrants and, people who are running from war and all that shit, like, yeah, they're coming from Venezuela. Like, it's real bad there. Anyway, so Ann Coulter wrote about that. It says, Venezuela's welfare has run out. Now they want ours. Couldn't we get some Danes instead? Like, I hear her. The massive news coverage of Governor Ron DeSantos' political stunt of sending 50 illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard reminds me of the media's political stunt of referring to illegals as legal asylum seekers. Number one, they broke into our country. They're illegal aliens. Number two, all asylum claims are fraud. Every single one. I don't think all asylum claims are fraud. There's like, I don't know how to put it. Like, it gets to a point where, like, if your country is at war, then every single person who's leaving is technically seeking asylum. But you can't have a whole country seeking asylum. That's like, then there's no point. It's just like, well, we might as well, either we're going to combine countries and have an open border, or we're going to have something else. And so, like, there's some people, like, for instance, in Ethiopia, there's a particular group, the Tigrayan group, who they're facing genocide right now. So, like, if the Tigrayan group don't leave Ethiopia, they will be murdered off. That's like a particular group. It's not like everyone in Ethiopia, though Ethiopia is facing a famine. So that's a thing too. But that's like, you don't, if you are suffering from famine, you're not like, I think asylum has to do with like war. You basically have to be like running away from war, I think. I'm not even sure about this. Anyway, asylum is nothing but a conveyor belt to bring the worst people on earth to our shores. You say you turned your own country into a hellhole? Fantastic. Come right in. Oh God, we have to talk about this for a second too. If everyone keeps saying that they're an immigrant and they're so fucking great, and immigrants are so fucking great, then why couldn't they be great where they are? If you're that fucking great, you like, don't get it twisted. Like, I keep using Ethiopia because I'm like more familiar with it, but there's like Ethiopian movie stars. There's tons of people in Africa who are like doctors, lawyers, all type of shit, engineers. Like, everyone is not coming over here. If you're fucking great, be great where you are, and then come over and like contribute something else. But these are people who don't have anything to contribute. They're like broke there with no skills and no money, no nothing, and they're just like coming here. Like, we already have broke people here. We have a lot of broke people here. Like, we really do. Like, no, for real. Like, we know what broke people look like. We have them. We have them here already. No one gets asylum from a well-run country. That's actually true. This is why I personally would like to go to Germany. Even there's like all this shit happening in Germany right now, and even with that, I guess the government has found like an additional like $10 billion or something to like pull the country out of whatever sort of shit it's going. It's like even as the country is going through a bad time, it's like figuring out ways to like be better for the citizens there. I just love it. I love everything about Germany. Even in their worst times, like they're still like, okay, we'll figure it out. It's just like good. This is how it should be. No one gets asylum from a well-run country. Why would we want to admit people who have demonstrated the wisdom? Why would we want to admit people who have demonstrated the wisdom, foresight, and diligence to produce a functioning society? Well, rewards await only those who participated in the creation of complete disaster zones. Just think of what these great thinkers could do for our country. She's being ironic here and mocking, but yes, she's basically saying they fucked up where they were and they contributed nothing. So what do you guys expect them to contribute here? Nothing, right? What do you got? Nothing plus nothing equals nothing. So take the Venezuelan illegal aliens whom DeSantis sent to Martha's Vineyard. Biden's press secretary and human Cupid doll, Karine Jean-Pierre, reportedly referred to the briefly loved illegals as people who are fleeing communism, who are fleeing hardship, desperate people who are trying to come here because they're fleeing communism themselves. And how did Venezuela become communist again? As the Martha's Vineyard Time explained, once the illegals were safely expelled and the island fumigated, Venezuela's humanitarian crisis resulted from that country's complicated political and socioeconomic history. Actually, it's not that complicated. Poor people in Venezuela voted for it. Oh boy, did they vote for it. The ridiculous peasant Hugo Chavez promised Venezuela's poor that he would take vengeance on the rich, the squalid ones, and give their stuff to the poor. Millions of poor people responded, yes. Beginning in 1998, and 5 times after that, the poor people came out in droves to support this clown. Fist pumping, dancing in the streets, red shirts as far as the eye could see. As the New York Times described it, to the adoring, impoverished masses who catapulted him to power, Hugo Chavez Frias is El Comandante, their protector and benefactor and bold leader who will wipe out 40 years of inequality and corruption and redirect this country's enormous oil wealth to better their lives. Chavez basically promised to deliver the Ta-Nehisi Coates equity agenda that's so popular with the Democratic Party right now. I actually like Ta-Nehisi Coates, but that's because he's talking about reparations for Black Americans. I don't really know what she's talking about there, about the equity. I'll click on it, but I want to finish the article. The poor believed the rich were rich because they'd stolen from the poor. Chavez vowed to take it back. It was sort of a 1619 project for Venezuela. That's completely inaccurate because the 1619 project is basically like just a historical record of how it's kind of like the legacy of slavery, really. I don't think Ann Coulter has actually read the 1619 project. I also don't think she gives a shit about Black American history. But I still agree with everything she said in terms of immigration, and that's a huge fucking issue, so let's talk about that. As promised, Chavez proceeded to seize the private businesses' farms. By 2011, he'd expropriated 6 million acres of farmland and golf resorts, telling poor people to move on to the club greens. Anybody want asylum yet? Nope. Between 1998 and Chavez's death in 2013, whereupon he was promptly replaced with his hand-picked successor, President Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's poor voted for him over and over again. In 1998, 80% of the public approval rating for his first year in office. In 2000, winning 60% of the vote. In 2004, 59% against recalling him. In 2006, winning 63% of the vote. In 2009, 54% to make him president for life. And finally, in 2012, winning 55% of the vote. Yeah, this guy's winning by a long shot. Never has any public been polled more often and returned the same resounding answer. Well, they're not fist pumping anymore. Instead, Venezuela's poor are claiming they deserve access to America's generous welfare state. And that's not really how it works. Whatever they were fighting for in Venezuela, the poor people would, I don't know what the poor people campaign in Venezuela looks like. I have no idea. But whatever it is that they were fighting for and they didn't get, you don't just get to be like, okay, now I'm going to go to America and ask for welfare. Like, that isn't how it works. Like, that doesn't even make sense. 20 years of Chavez's diversity, inclusion, and equity produced this, a country whose economy has collapsed. Malnutrition and disease are soaring, and millions have immigrated to escape the grind of finding enough to eat, of living without reliable electricity or tap water, as Bloomberg News puts it in 2019. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Venezuela is sitting on the largest oil reserves in the world, and the communists still couldn't get it to work. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, anyone with 2 functioning brain cells. There were little hints, like Chavez promising his very first year in office to follow the path of Fidel, and describing Cuba as a sea of happiness, social justice, and true peace. Millions of Venezuela's poor thought that sounded just peachy, and the rest did nothing. They act as if this 100% predictable catastrophe was a natural disaster for which they bear no responsibility. Yeah, I definitely want these people as my fellow citizens. They've shown solid judgment. Now that their own choices have wrecked their country, they demand free admission into ours. Unless they're professional baseball players, I'm not seeing what's in it for us. In the Cupid Doll's press conference proclaiming that these innocent little lambs deserve better than being sent to a fabulous beach resort, she cheerfully listed the great heaping portions of welfare being ladled out to Hispanics. Our administration has delivered billions of dollars in loans to Hispanic small businesses, expanded the child tax credit to provide help to millions of families and reduce Hispanic child poverty by more than 40%, expanded access to quality health care to thousands of Latino families, and thanks to President Biden's student loan debt relief program, almost half of Latino students with federal loans will see their debts forgiven. What? The Democratic Party is cribbing Chavez's lines, and it will work because the same people who fell for it last time will be voting for it here. To be sure, the Venezuelan asylum seekers aren't any worse than members of that illustrious group. If, when they are granted asylum, these poor decision makers will join. Tamerlan and Dosgar Snarvishna, the Boston Marathon bombers, sometimes they're persecuted for a reason. Ibrahim Todashev, who along with Tamerlan slit the throats of 3 Jewish men in Boston, damn. Beatrice Munyenzi, a genocidal Rwandan who won asylum by lying about being a victim of the genocide rather than a perpetrator. Oh God. Those are just a few of our standout asylum grantees. To be fair, the illegal Venezuelans haven't killed anybody yet, as far as we know. They're more like a homeless guy who shows up on your doorstep after a lifetime of bad choices and demands that you give him your house. Perhaps just this once, we should defer to the wisdom of our moral betters on Martha's Vineyard and tell the Venezuelans, we love you, now get the hell out. Well, she's right.